The history of mankind from the earliest times has been one of alternate peace and war with fire.
There have been many natural disasters throughout history, with fires being one of the most recurring and deadliest of them. Fire can and will burn anything in its path, reducing everything it comes into contact with to ash and dust. Fires can also degrade air quality, harm the wilderness, and cause significant economic damage. As a result, fire prevention has always been a top priority for humans throughout history. In ancient times, when a fire starts and breaks loose, people had little control of what would happen next. As a result, people started to devise solutions. Ancient Roman Emperor Crassus had an army of 500 slaves armed with buckets to arrive at the scene of a fire at the first cry of help. However, they did not put out the fire until a negotiated price was agreed on. If it took too long, it would be too late. Crassus would frequently purchase out the properties that had been destroyed by flame, rebuild them, and resell them at a greater price. Many cities around the world in the 17th and 18th centuries would have private fire insurance companies. In London, buildings covered under a certain company would have a plaque indicating that they were covered. When a fire would occur, many fire brigades would arrive at the scene, but would only put out the fire if they saw their plaque. Not until associated firefighting groups came together for the common good did the effective fire department start to take shape.
Scotland during Braidwood's life in the 19th century was near the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. Rapid advances in technology made it so manufacturing was more efficient, wages grew, technology grew, and the population grew. James Braidwood was born in 1800s. In his early life, he had worked at his father's construction company, Braidwood & Son. While working at the company, he developed an interest in surveying and fires in buildings. He decided to pursue surveying instead of working in construction. Like his father, this gave him great knowledge about buildings and building materials. After graduating from high school, he began to work in insurance companies and the municipal government to get work on his passion. Braidwood soon got appointed to Master of Fire Engines of the city of Edinburgh. After several serious fires and the ineffectiveness of the insurance companies, the city moved to get a fire department. With collaboration of city officials and insurance companies, they created the world's first municipal fire department, serving the public. Just months after the fire department was established, one of the most destructive fires in Scotland's history had broken out. The Great Fire of Edinburgh. This was Braidwood's test to see if one of the first fire departments in the world would prove its name.
The fire was devastating. Many streets and buildings were destroyed, hundreds of which were engulfed, leaving hundreds of families homeless. 13 people were reported to have died in the fire. In the end, however, the fire department successfully managed to put out the fire. Braidwood was distinguished for his heroism and had continued his career. He, in his 1830 book, described his most groundbreaking contribution to firefighting, the popular aggressive interior attack. He saw that dousing flames from the outside was useless. As a result, he commanded his men to work in two-man teams to go to the heart of the fire.
When the hose is attached and the engine filled with water, the man who holds the nozzle, accompanied by another, should get as near the fire inside the house that the water from the nozzle may strike the burning materials.
So when firefighters are at the scene of a fire, what is the first thing they do?
Know what you're going into. Here in the city of Napa and a lot of departments, we were trained to get at least 3. We want to see 3 sides or do a 360. A school this size, we're going to hope for 3. So if we're coming in down Linking, we're going to get the west side here, turn the corner, get the south side, get over that side, look at the west side, and get an idea of what we've got going on in the whole big picture. So the size up, and then that's also including what do you see? Do you have smoke showing? And then there's reading smoke, which you guys might have already looked at. the type of smoke. White smoke, gray smoke, black smoke is going to determine what is on fire and how much you have.
Soon, Braidwood moved to London and became superintendent of the London fire engine establishment, freeing the London area from the poor service of insurance companies. One problem that could be noted during this period is the advent of steam power. Firefighters needed help from the volunteers in pumping water to their hoses and the promise of beer. Steam power could substitute the power of 40 men, the number of people required to operate a pump. However, it took 20 years for Braidwood to implement this technology, which is common in the firefighting industry. So when a new fire technology comes out, are people usually resistant to it?
Extremely. The fire service is deeply rooted in tradition. I'll add to that by saying that in the last 20 years, with the change of our outlook and mentality, we understand that technology is a good thing, and we are less resistant to change now. From the turn of the century, 1900 on up, it was the way we always did things. Now we're finding out that there's so many new things that we can be doing. Here in California, we've gone through cycles of wildland fires. We used to use borate bombers. Now it's a different type of chemical that, and actually some of the new fire retardant that they drop out of airplanes actually has grass seed in it. So as it's putting the fire out, it's also leaving seeds for regrowth and helping the forest come back.
In his book, published posthumously as a collection of his work, Fire Prevention and Fire Extinction, he states all of his methods of firefighting, many of which used today. One of which recommends that you should close all doors and windows at the location of a fire to prevent it from spreading.
On the first discovery of fire, it is the utmost consequence to shut and keep shut all doors, windows, and openings. It may be observed, after the house has been on fire, that one floor is comparatively untouched, while those above and below are nearly burned out.
Modern research yields the same conclusion. According to UL's FRSI, Firefighter Safety Research Institute, closing a door can help reduce the fire spreading in the building. Countless lives have been saved as a result of its principle. Braidwood also proposed the following principles: no open flames, no leaving fires unattended.
The fire service is historically a experience and learn atmosphere, and we learn a lot through our experiences. It used to be we would open all the doors and windows and get the smoke out, but we quickly figured out that that's all the fresh air coming in feeding the fire. 2006, 2007 is when it really nationally took off and a campaign started to close the windows and doors. No fresh air, it slows down the fire and keeps all the dangerous smoke out of the existing rooms, out of the healthy rooms.
In June of 1861, a fire broke out in Cotton's Wharf near London Bridge Station. This was a fire that was one of the greatest fires since the Great Fire of London. Braidwood, now 61, led his firefighters to the scene of the fire. After hours of fighting the fire, a 40-foot wall had crushed Braidwood. A week after his body was recovered, a funeral was held for him, where the procession stretched for more than a mile. Queen Victoria sent her condolences. Her Majesty the Queen, with that ready sympathy which she has ever shown for crushed or suffering heroism, commanded the Earl of Stanford to inquire on the spot on Monday whether the body had yet been recovered by the firemen, and Her Majesty's sympathies were also conveyed to Mrs. Braidwood. He was buried at the Abney Park Cemetery. He was married and had a child. Despite Braidwood's death, his actions would still have rippling effects for years to come. Firefighters and the services that they provide continue to save lives and property, thanks in part to the efforts of a Scotsman from the 19th century. The untold lives he saved cannot be expressed as a number, but can be felt deeply emotionally.